but what I look at today is the prophetic picture he was starting even then. Because if you remember at the end of The King and I, toward the end, Anna and the king do the big shall we dance number. They waltz across the stage and all of that. And I thought, I look at it now and I think, Lord, you reached down into obscurity. You pulled me out to dance with you.
When did that happen exactly? And then what led you to your heart and, doing what you're doing in ministering to empty nester moms or parents?
You're listening to Altered Stories with Michelle Gutch.
Hey, friends. Are you facing the inevitable transition of and realities of being an empty nester? Are you struggling with understanding your purpose and what is next in your life, in your marriage or your hobbies, or as you release motherhood? My special guest today will be sharing her personal story of the catch and release of motherhood and the reality of being an empty nester. This is your chief storyteller host, Michelle Saunders Gutch, and you are listening to the Altered Stories Show, Season 4, Episode 169, featuring special guest here, Kate Battestelli, who is sharing her a beginning, not an end God story. And friends, the Altered Story Show shares transformational Christian women's God stories from all over the world so women around the world can hear them and never feel alone in their struggles. And thank you for listening and viewing our show. And if one of our God stories has blessed you, then consider blessing us with a pay it forward donation to help another woman like the lovely Kate here share her God story. So friends, here is what you need to know about Kate. I'm going to just give you some info. She's got it in her bio, but I love to do this, as you know. She is an author of The After Party of the Empty Nest Mom Is Not Your Only Name and Growing Great Kids books. She is also a contributing writer to many publications, including Guideposts. I love Guideposts. I read Guideposts. And I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory. As a young actress in New York City, Kate had a life-changing experience from understudy to starring as Anna in the Broadway National Tour of The King and I, opposite Yule Bryner. I love that movie. I loved it. Kate and her husband laid down their careers in New York City to a life of homeschooling and a home business. And now she lives in Franklin, Tennessee, and is the mom to Francesca Battistelli, a well-known and gifted contemporary Christian recording artist. And guess what else she does? She's a grandma. I think you're a grandma. Do they call you grandma?
Mimi.
Mimi. To seven precious grandchildren. So enough of that. Welcome to the show, Kate. How are you?
I'm doing well, Michelle. Thanks for having me on today.
Okay. Is there anything about you personally that you will not be sharing in your God story, but you'd like the audience to know?
You know, I never thought I'd live in Tennessee because I'm from the Northeast. I grew up in New Jersey, and I just never considered the South as somewhere I would ever live. But because our daughter, she ended up in Nashville when she signed a record deal and moved up here. And that when she started having babies, since she's our only child, I thought, well, I have to be where she is. I've got to be where those babies are. So we moved, I guess we're in our 10th year here in Franklin, Tennessee, and love it. So we're about hour from her and from the grandkids. But I'll tell you, the other thing, she has 5 boys, 2 girls, and the 3 middle ones, 9, 8, and 5, are boys. And I'm telling you what, you raise one girl, boys are a different species. So you moms of boys, I feel you. They're wonderful. I mean, they're great, but they're just so full of energy. Just put it that way. But it's a real blessing to be able to be part of their lives, you know?
Yeah, well, what a blessing that you're so close too. I mean,
Yeah.
I know my husband and I moved from Colorado Springs to the Kansas City area to be
Mm.
closer to our granddaughters and
Right.
our daughter because she's our only daughter. And you know, it's a transition, right, and a change.
Definitely.
But
Yeah.
what a blessing, like you said. So I'm sure they adore you as their Mimi.
Fun.
So today, Kate, we're going to be talking about you're a beginning, not an end God's story, right?
Hmm.
And so I, before we jump into that story, because I'm sure there's so much, I wanted to kind of get your opinion around why it's important for women to share their testimonies, their God stories, why do you think it's um, an important thing for women to do?
Yeah.
Because this is all about God's stories, my podcast and our ministry and what we do. But I think it's always great to hear from the guest.
Oh, we really have to, because when we share our story, I think it validates their story. And so many times the things I share, especially about my past and the bad things, the wrong things that I did, when someone sees that you're being transparent, I think they're able then to be more honest. And if your story impacts them, hopefully they'll realize, wow, maybe by me telling my story, it's going to help them. Because I've been told that so many times that when I speak somewhere, they're so grateful that I was transparent, because it just makes them feel like now they can share. They don't have to be afraid. You know what
Right.
I mean? Because we
Yeah.
all have pasts. I didn't meet the Lord till I was 29. So I did all the things you shouldn't do,
Yep.
so I understand that. And to be able to share that, just put it out there with no fear and no shame. I just think it gives other women the freedom then to share their story, because we need each other's stories. We
Yeah.
need to know what they're going through, because it helps us understand. And I think sometimes we look at their life and think, man, it looks so perfect. Their house could be on Pinterest. Everything looks great, not knowing that underneath there may be some major things going on in their lives. So we can either look at the outside or get to know their story. I think it's so important.
Yeah, and we're going to do that with you.
Good.
So I love it. I love it. That's what it's all about. We're going to get to the heart today. So why don't you just take the mic, Kate, and tell us kind of where your God story around a beginning, not an end,
Yeah.
started.
Absolutely. My God story. I just look at my life and I tell people it's just so quirky, because it's just not the typical life. Because like I said, I wasn't a Christian, but I was a struggling actress in New York City. Like I said, I grew up in New Jersey. And eventually, when I knew this is what I wanted to do, I moved to New York, wanted to be a star. I wanted to win a Tony, be on Broadway, do all that stuff. And so I was doing things, I'd go out for different things, children's theater, regional theater, and all that. Well, one day my agent called and he said, Kate, I want you to go audition for the understudy for the leading lady in this big Broadway National Tour of The King and I, starring Yule Bryner. And I
Mhm.
thought, well, I'm probably way too young, but hey, I'll go. Maybe I'll be the understudy. Well, I got the part and I thought, this is amazing. I'm never going to get to go on, because it's not often that an understudy in a major role like that takes over.
No, no,
Not
no.
at that level. But about a month into the show, about 2 months in, I walk into the stage door and the stage manager literally runs to me and grabs me and says, she's sick, you're on. And I mean, I
Yeah.
back in those days, there were no cell phones. You couldn't get a hold of someone during the day. And I'm almost glad, because I would have I would have been truly terrified. But this, you have no choice. This is what you're being paid for. This is and I knew the part, we rehearsed and stuff, but
Yeah.
never wore the costumes, never handled the props, never did a scene with Yule Bryner, who some of your younger listeners might not know who that was. But if you've ever seen the 10 Commandments,
Oh,
he was Pharaoh. And I mean,
I
everybody's seen
watched
that.
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
or Westworld. Maybe you've seen The King and I. He was in the movie before I was born, did the Broadway musical. And then he did revivals for, 40 years. He just kept doing revivals, which is what I was part of. Well, anyway, so my life has flashed before my eyes. I'm thinking, I have no choice. I have to do this. And it was pretty terrifying. And I remember standing in the wings, listening to the orchestra about to step on, because I'm the first one on stage, and thinking, sometimes you just have to do it afraid. There's times you don't get to back out. And I told that to my daughter many times. It
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
it doesn't matter if you're afraid. You said you're going to do it. You have to do it. So that was a big life lesson for me in that moment. But I went out, I did the show, I survived. I thought, if I don't die, then, life,
Oh
life
my,
is good.
I'm serious thinking about you at that age dealing with that.
Yeah, I was
Oh,
26. I was very young.
wow.
And that's a real marquee role. It's probably the biggest role for a female in all of musical theater, because I'm on stage all but maybe 25 minutes. So it's crazy. A 3-hour show, that's a long time. Anyway, I survived. I ended up doing the show for 2 weeks because the leading lady had pneumonia. So she came back to the show. I went back to the chorus because that's how it works as an
Hmm.
understudy. And I thought, well, that was great. I can add that to my resume. That's a wonderful credit to have. But figuring that was it. Well, a
Yeah.
month later, I get a call from one of the producers, and he says, Mr. Bryner has bought out the leading lady's 2-year contract. He sent her back to New York, and he wants you in the role. I
Oh.
mean, at 26 years old, that just doesn't ever happen. Never does an understudy take the lead. Never that I've heard of, other than me. It's just crazy, especially at that level. I mean, I was good. I was trained.
Yeah.
I'd had good training in the musical theater world, but that's a high level, you know what I mean? And I thought, well, okay. But I think I brought a lot of youthfulness to the show. And I,
Yeah.
I have to say, my husband always says that that was the perfect role for me of all of musical theater. That was kind of the one that I find it interesting that the Lord put me in. Remember, I didn't know him yet, but what I
Yeah.
look at today is the prophetic picture he was starting even then. Because if you remember at the end of The King and I, toward the end, Anna and the king do the big shall we dance number. They waltz across the stage and all of that. And I thought, I look at it now and I think, Lord, you reached down into obscurity. You pulled me out to
Yeah.
dance with you, and
Oh, how beautiful.
it just blows my mind. I actually want to write a book about that whole thing about intimacy with the Lord, but I see it now. So even then he was starting, when we especially if we become Christians later in life, if you start looking back, you're going to go, okay, that's what that was for. That's why you were doing that. So anyway, all that to say, I ended up taking over the role, did it, almost 3 years, about 1,000 performances with Yule Bryner. About 25% of all the performances he'd ever done, I got to do with him, which that also blows my mind. But probably the best part was this cute young guy joined the show named Mike Battestelli. He was down in the orchestra pit because he was the associate conductor. And I remember when he first joined, I'm looking down into the pit because we played big theaters, so you could always see the orchestra. He's looking up at me, and I thought, all right, who is this guy? I got to find out the scoop on him. And, we just literally ended up falling in love across the footlights because I could see him, he could see me. And it was really meant to be, because I knew
Uh-huh.
once I met him, I thought, this is it. This is the one for me. So did the show and ended up, I guess it was the summer of 1983, we got married. We
Hmm.
still didn't know the Lord, but I'll quickly tell you that story. We had a little side business in New York, and we were working with a gal that took us under her wing. She was mentoring us, and she was a born-again Jewish woman, a Messianic Jew.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
her name
Okay.
is June, and she kept inviting us to church, and she just kept inviting and inviting us. We kept saying, no, we're good, thanks. But then it just got to the point, Mike and I looked at each other and said, if she asks us one more time, it will be rude for us to say no. So let's just, next time she asks, we'll get it over with. So that week she said, you got to come Friday night. We've got this great gospel choir. You got to come hear the music. And we thought, okay, well, just this way she won't bug us anymore. So we end up getting on, if you know New York, we get on the F train and all the way to Jamaica, Queens. So it's like 45-minute subway ride, not fun, but
yeah.
anyway, that's where the church was, in Jamaica, Queens, and we come up out of the subway, and the church was actually in an old theater. So it was kind of a neat place that it was in.
Perfect.
But anyway, it's about 2 blocks from the subway station, and as we're walking, you kind of sense the building almost pulsating, and you could kind of hear the music, and we're starting to think, okay, what are we walking into? Because I was raised going to the Episcopal Church. Mike, I think he went to the Methodist Church. So I wasn't raised understanding the Holy Spirit or knowing anything about him. So we walk in the doors of this church only to find out it's an all-black holiness church, which I didn't know what any of that was. There are crutches hanging on the wall from people that have been healed, empty wheelchairs. I mean, and a holiness church, the men and women sit on different sides of the church. Women don't wear makeup or jewelry, or just you have to wear a dress or a skirt. It's very conservative. I didn't know, I don't know what I didn't know anything about it. I just didn't understand. We didn't quite get what we're feeling, because when the Holy Spirit hits you, you don't know for the first time. You don't fully register what's happening. But anyway, she takes us down, sits us in the front row. She and Mike and I are the only three white faces in an all black church. The pastor gives this fiery salvation message, which I'm pretty sure she let him know that, you need to get these two. They need to be saved. So he gives this message, gives the altar call. Mike's on one side, I'm on the other. He goes forward and I go forward, not knowing that the other one's going forward to receive the Lord. So we both met the Lord that night. Really never looked back from that moment, but we continued in New York. We still were pursuing our careers. I still wanted to win a Tony. He was conducting on Broadway, Radio City, doing all this stuff. But a year after we met the Lord, we had our daughter, Francesca. And a year after that, we're still in New York, and we're starting to get this strange feeling, both of us. And I'm thinking, do you feel what I'm feeling? We both sensed that the Lord was telling us, that is not the life that I have for you. I have something different, and I want you to lay down your careers and walk away, which, my husband has a doctorate in music. He'd been pursuing that
huge.
For decades. I know.
Francesca.
Crazy. It made us feel like
I'm sure she knows her parents did this.
Oh, she does. She does. And that's part of that is, I think, because we were obedient, because obedience has a reward at some point. But anyway, we ended up, we just walked away. It felt like Abraham, when God says, Abraham, leave everything, your family, your friends, your home, go to a land that I'll show you, but I'm not going to tell you, you just obey. And Abraham did. And we all know what happened. So it felt like that, it was like, well, we don't know what this means, where we're going, but we ended up moving back to New Jersey for a while, because as Mike says, if it didn't work out, we're only 45 minutes from Broadway. So
yeah,
but it did, we ended up moving to the Orlando area, where we raised our daughter. We were there for 20 years.
Okay.
But yeah, it was just the whole thing. I see it now, though, with what's happened with her and her career. It's like the Lord saying, I couldn't use you because I just wanted to be famous. I wanted it for me, but he could use her because she wants to make his name famous. So there's a real difference there. But our ceiling really became her floor, just because of what we poured into her. So now it makes sense. And just for any audience listeners that are going, I just am in this place in my life where it doesn't make sense and I can't figure it out. Trust me, years will give perspective. You're going to look back at some point and go, that's why that happened. And you'll see that it was the right thing. Not to say it wasn't a hard thing, but it will make sense when you look at the whole landscape of your life. It really will make sense.
This is a good time now, friends, to take a mental health break with Sherry Puckett.
Hello, friends. This is Sherry Puckett, licensed professional counselor. As a counselor, I'm very visual, and so I have this whiteboard in my office, and then I often draw this picture of my client at the very bottom of the whiteboard, and then two roads in front of him. One road is very, very familiar. He's been on it his entire life. It feels safe. He knows exactly what to expect on that road, but it does not yield purpose. And then there is another road that Jesus is calling him down. It's that road of purpose and this massive plan that God has in store for him. And yet he doesn't know if he likes the unknown. So, first of all, I want to ask you, if you find yourself in that position where you're afraid to step out in faith and you're afraid to just walk and follow Jesus where he's leading you because it is the unknown to you, I need to ask you a couple questions. What lies are you listening to that's keeping you off of that road? Are you telling yourself, I'll never amount to anything? I'll be a big failure. People will laugh at me. What are you telling yourself that is keeping you from experiencing all that God has for you? Here are a couple of tips that I believe will be very helpful for you. Number one is remember that we don't live this life to please other people. That is a never-ending cycle that never yields anything positive. That's the first thing. The second thing is that God himself is creator of all things seen and unseen, and he created you. And you, he created and designed for this purpose. And so just as Moses couldn't figure out, God, why would you use me? I stutter. I don't even speak well. And God himself said, who made man's mouth, right? So you were uniquely created to fulfill this purpose. You have to keep that in mind as well. And then the next thing is that really it's not about you. It's not about me. It's really about the kingdom of God and expanding his kingdom. So whether he's calling you into a venture of starting your own business or own ministry, or maybe he's calling you to just minister to people in your neighborhood, it doesn't matter. We all have a purpose. And believe me, you will not regret it if you walk on the right road. I will see you next time. Thanks.
Okay, so Kate, there was a lot that you walked us through that brought us up to date to where you ended with raising Francesca in Orlando and your act of obedience, which, boy, I could talk to you about that all day. Because that is a huge commitment and step and walk of faith to take that, because you are laying down and surrendering things. And God does honor that, like you said. I mean, there's so much wisdom that you've shared. So bring us up to date now with why you did the book. I mean, so why you became an empty nester. And when did that happen exactly? And then what led you to your heart and, doing what you're doing in ministering to empty nester moms or parents?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because men definitely have an empty nest too. Well, by the time she had signed her record deal, moved to New York, this is like 2007, she was getting songs on the radio. Her name was becoming known. And this right at that time is when she finally left, because my husband helped her navigate all the beginning things. It's a lot to be able to get to that point where you're going to get on the radio. You know what I mean? It takes a lot. So we were navigating all that with her for a few years, and I never had even thought about the empty nest because we were with her so much, it just didn't occur to me. So I never planned for it, but I'll get back to that. But anyway, so she's getting on the radio. People are knowing her name. We had homeschooled her, and we were part of a big homeschool organization in Orlando. And one night, the lady that ran that, she calls me up and she goes, Kate, we want you and Mike to come and speak to our parents about what did you do to raise your daughter to not only find her passion and her path in life, but to maintain her relationship with the Lord, because she still had that strong relationship. Like so many kids leave home and just kind of walk away from the Lord. but she stuck with it. So, will you please come and talk to them? What did you do? And I said, oh, okay, sure, we'd love to come. And I hung up the phone and I looked at Mike and I said, what the heck did we do? Because you're trying to raise your child according to biblical principles, but there's no real parenting manual that you can just check off 1, 2, 3. But we sat down and talked about it, and we came up with 15 things, concrete things. And I thought, okay, we really were pretty intentional about this. Well, a couple of weeks later, we give our talk, and it goes great. The parents seem to really get a lot out of it. And the next morning, I'm praying, I'm thanking the Lord that it went well. And as soon as I thanked him for those 15 things, I heard him say, those are book chapters. And I thought, book chapters? Lord, I don't want to write a book. I'm not a writer. I didn't graduate college. Actually, I went to 4 colleges in 2 years, didn't graduate from any of them. So I am a college dropout, but it just wasn't my thing. I want to be a star.
A movie star like
me,
all the others.
I want to be famous.
Some of them, very few, have degrees.
Well,
yeah.
Anyway, so I just gave him every excuse. I'm not a parenting expert who will publish it. No one will read it. We do that. We like to do that with the Lord when he tells us to do something crazy, which I now call a God dare. But anyway, so I just thought, okay, what do I do with this? Well, I found out a friend of mine was a writing coach. And I thought, well, at least she knows something about this whole thing because I don't know anything. I always knew I could write. I knew I was a good writer, like I wrote journals, but I never considered becoming an author. That was way outside my comfort zone or anything. It just never occurred to me. So I said, okay, Diane, I got to show you these 15 things. Tell me if this is a book. So I show them to her. She looks and she goes, yes, this is a book. I'm going to get you started. You're going to write it. We're going to get it published. So then I thought, okay, now I can't get out of this now. I have no excuse. So she did. She helped me. We got the 15 things were the chapters. Right there, I had my outline. The Lord is he's so generous, when he does that. And I tell people all the time, if he calls you to it, he'll equip you to do it. He has to. He had to equip me. I could not have done this it couldn't have just been an idea. And I thought, oh, that'd be fun. This was like, I knew this was the Lord telling me to do this. So I wrote the book and I got it published. I had no agent or anything. That all in itself is a crazy story, but it came out. It's called Growing Great Kids. And that came out in 2012. And it's our 15 things, basically. Well, I had a little blog by that time, and I wrote this blog post. I thought, God, you dared me to write that book. I did not want to. You dared me to do it. I did it. I took your dare and I succeeded. And I thought, all right, I've got to look at scripture a little bit differently. So I start going through just the big Bible heroes and seeing how did God draw them. To me, it was a dare. It was like, Esther, go into the king. You're probably going to get killed, but are you going to do this? And she did. And, Gideon, all these different Bible heroes, Abraham. I started seeing this. I thought, okay, you do this all over the place. You're daring us to do something crazy, difficult that we can't do on our own. We can, if we could do it, we wouldn't need the Lord, right? So I wrote this little blog post called The God Dare, and I listed, a bunch of these biblical heroes, a lot of my story. And a friend of mine at the publishing house, she said, Kate, you need to turn this into a book. So that one took a little while. That one came out in 2019. It's called The God Dare, and it's a lot of my story, all the 15 different biblical heroes. Actually, I'm redoing it. I'm adding a bunch to it, a bunch of the obscure women that we never talk about. And, when we're teaching Bible studies, nobody talks about particular women, so I'm talking about them. But anyway, so I'm redoing that. But then, so then that season went by, and then I'm starting to really listening to a lot of women going to the empty nest and listening to their stories and thinking, you've kind of got this all wrong. This is a good time of life. Yes, it's hard in the beginning. It's going to be hard. Your kids are going away. You're thinking, well, now what's my purpose? What do I do now? I had no clue. Some women do. They know, hey, when the kids are gone, I'm moving into this, or I'm already doing it and I'm going to go into it more. They're blessed because they don't get into that place of mourning and guilt and sorrow. It's like we can get stuck there. And my book is to remind them, mom is not your only name. It's one of your names. And
Right.
it's something you've accomplished. And for most women, typically now you're done with that season. What's your other name? I mean, I tell women all the time, if you told me 15 years ago, Kate, in 15 years, you'll have written 4 books. You'll be part of a successful podcast. You'll be speaking around the country. I'd have said, you're crazy. That's not me. But God said, that is you, So what is that thing he's saying? You're a mom and. What's your and? What is that thing? And what's been really weighing on me recently, when we look at all the crazy that's going on in the world, I'm a believer that the Lord is going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we're in the end times. If not at the very end, I don't know. It could be 5 years, it could be 100.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like we're in the end. So if that's the case,
Isn't that
God
amazing?
saved us till now. He saved each and every one of your listeners till now. You could have been born in 1850 or 300 AD. We could have been born any time in history. God said, no, I'm saving you till last. I'm putting you on this planet for a reason, because I have a specific purpose for you to build the kingdom. And if we think of it that way, it will convict us, hopefully, to go, okay, what am I doing? I can't sit home and be miserable and watch Netflix and eat Cheetos all day.
Right.
I have to get out. God has a purpose. And our job as empty nest moms and dads is to find out what that is, to pray, Lord, what do you have me here for? There's got to be something you're on this planet for. Maybe it's writing a book. Maybe it's getting your degree again, going back for that degree.
That's
and
what
God's
I
going to
did.
use you in whatever that is.
Yeah.
Maybe you're supposed to go into, maybe you're supposed to go into politics or there's a million things. Maybe it might not always be a big thing. Sometimes it's as simple as, I want you to work in the children's nursery, or I want you to go to the Alzheimer's unit in the hospital and minister to those people. All those things are so important at this point. We always think it has to be something big.
No.
It definitely doesn't. God loves to
Mm-hmm.
use those of us who are in obscurity, because what we're doing, I mean, I always think of Billy Graham's mother. She was just raising Billy Graham. She wasn't raising Billy Graham, the great
Mm-hmm.
evangelist. She was just pouring into him what she knew, and he took it and went with it, and
Amazing.
he literally changed the world. So
no, I love it.
Sorry,
I love
I've been
it
talking.
because you can tell you're very passionate about this. And this is important because there are a lot of different people going through a lot of different stages of loss during the empty nester time, or approaching that. And I wish I would have had more help and guidance from others who've been through it, because it's just not talked about. It wasn't. And so that's why I felt it was a very important topic, because I have friends even now who, they're going through, transition. And it is truly a transition. And it's just God taking you out of one role and moving you in. But then as you get into that cadence and you're starting to be more in your calling there, God works. And sometimes, Kate, the kids come back. So
well, that does happen. Yes.
It doesn't happen often, but it does sometimes. And sometimes it's short transitions. And sometimes they never leave the nest. So I'd love to get your perspective on those people.
Yeah. Well, some birds push their babies out, and I think you're right. If they come back for a short term, and we have to think at this time in history,
what I mean.
It's expensive for a child to go out and even rent an apartment. There are a lot of cities where they require you to have a certain salary that they'll even rent to you. And in some places it's $100,000 a year. Well, how many 25-year-olds are earning that? So I get that it can be hard. And sometimes they're going to need to come back so they can save to move out. But then there's those kids that just don't want to go. And sometimes you need to just say, look, I can't I can't keep you any longer. You have to go, or you're going to have to pay me rent, because there are less responsible kids out there, adult kids that sometimes need a little push. And it just totally depends on that child. If they've got issues that they're dealing with, that being with you is going to be better. But ideally, you don't want them to come back. You
Right.
want them to go off like you did and find their life, find their purpose. What are they on this planet to do? So that can be kind of sticky when they come back and just won't leave. Sometimes they just need to
Tough
be
love.
told to leave, or invited to.
So,
Tough
okay.
love.
So, boy, we could talk on this, and we're kind of reaching the point now where we need to wrap up. But one of the things we haven't talked about is the empty nester mom that's a Christian mom, and she's raised the children, and they have a prodigal, and they are releasing that prodigal. Do you address that in your book, or what's your
I do.
What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I have a whole chapter on prodigals, and it's in this world right now in history, it's crazy. Kids are so easily sucked into the world, into the vortex of the crazy that's on social media, that's, just the political beliefs. There's so much hitting our kids that didn't hit us. I mean, we didn't have cell phones. Even Franny, when she was young, there was no Facebook till she was 18. So she wasn't faced. I'm grateful she was not faced with any of this. Her kids are, but she doesn't allow cell phones or any connection to the internet, even though the oldest is 15. But, she's very careful about that because she sees what's going on. So it's easier for it to happen. I think it's more common than it used to be. But I tell moms, your biggest weapon is prayer. That's the thing you have. If you have any connection with them, just keep that connection alive as best you can. But there are those kids that want nothing to do with their family, don't want to talk to them or anything. Prayer is the thing that's going to get you through. And I remind them that Jesus left the 99 to find the one. And he knows exactly where your child is. So trust that he's going after that child. He loves them even more than you do. And it's so hard to imagine, but it's so true. And that if they trust, hang on, pray, you really have to intercede for your kids. You've got one that's off the rails, and that just constantly pray protection. I loved the prayer before we started today. It was, we have to remember that we do have authority. We have authority in the spirit realm. We have to take that authority, declare, truth over our children, what's in the scripture. I think that's really important but prayer is going to be the biggest thing. And I often pray. None of my family members are saved, so I've been praying for them for forever. And I often I say, Lord, send an ambassador into their lives that they'll listen to, because they're not going to listen to me, though I pray for them all the time, but somebody else that's saying the same thing might be the one to wake them up. So pray for that there'll be people that'll get into their life that will influence them, and that the Holy Spirit will just overpower them with truth. Sometimes it might be through a dream. I hear about that a lot, that God gives them a dream and that just
that's
wakes
wonderful.
them up. So,
well, thank you for those encouraging words. And thank you again for taking the time out of your crazy life. I mean, it's so fulfilled, it sounds like, and you're such a blessing. I really appreciate the opportunity to, chat with you about this season. And also wanted to just ask, in closing, if you have a way to reach out, or, how do people get in touch with you or listen to your podcast if you have that going on, or read your book? Can you share that for my audience?
Sure. Yeah, my website's katebattestelli.com. Everything on social media is just Kate Battestelli, so I'm easy to find. Even if you just start putting in Kate Bat, usually it'll come up, because Battestelli's the easiest to spell. Yeah, my books are available on Amazon. I'm part of the Mom to Mom podcast, but we're not recording anymore, but all the episodes are still there. And it's a great podcast because it's 3 generations of moms. And so we have all the different perspectives on whatever issue it is we're talking about. So it's still being downloaded a lot, which is good, but we're just not recording. So yeah, those are all places you can find me. I'd love to connect,
Cool.
email me or text me or whatever.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One last question. What is your favorite song that Francesca has recorded?
I think probably Defender, although there's a Christmas song I don't know if it's on her Christmas albums, but it's on YouTube, and it's the story of Mary having Jesus. It was a beautiful video, and the song is Be Born in Me. I hear that and I just weep. It's just such a beautiful, I don't know, just a beautiful encapsulation of the whole story, but it's a great video. And, it goes on for a little minute before she starts to sing, but then it's just, so that's my absolute favorite. But then the next would be probably Defender.
We just had to ask.
Another good one. Yeah.
Again, thank you so much. And friends, we're going to have this episode out. We'll have a page on our website where you can go out there and you can get all the links and all the information about Kate for your convenience. And until the next show, friends, be heard and be healed.
Altered Stories Ministry is a faith-based, nonprofit, and women's evangelistic storytelling ministry. If you enjoyed listening to today's story, your family and friends would probably benefit from hearing how God works in the lives of women all over the world, too. So please, subscribe to our show and share the link to this podcast. Share it on your social media. We also welcome your valued feedback on our stories. Also, we'd appreciate your prayerful consideration in sponsoring one of our future God-glorifying stories and welcome your tax-exempt financial donation. To find out more on how you can support our ministry, you can log on to our website at www.alteredstories.org.